At the end of the day, I walk through my shop when I'm in the office or when I'm at home on Teams. At 5 o'clock, I issue a message. It's time to shut down, log off, go home. If I'm in the office, I'm walking through my cubicles. Guys, turn it out, turn it off. It's time to go. 5:15, this needs to be a ghost town, right? Like they have lives outside of work too. And we as public sector managers need to empower them to feel okay about walking away from the job at the time that they're supposed to stop, because otherwise, exactly what you mentioned, that burnout, that mental drain, it's all going to take its toll. And I would rather have an individual recharge on a daily basis than have them reach a critical breakdown and lose them for a week because they're either sick, they just need mental health time, whatever the case may be. We need to break that up in sections for them and allow them to feel okay doing that.
So Ben, welcome to our episode number one, bringing local leaders and leaders like yourself and helping them tell their story and talking to them about what got them there to where they are, and hopefully they can serve as an inspiration to anybody else like wants to join public service. And we'll also talk about a couple of things we addressed earlier. So I would love to get started to know you about your journey. Like you went from U.S. Army to leading the treasury and tax area of one of the biggest counties in U.S. I mean, 11 million people is no joke. How did that happen?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the backstory behind even joining the military was, I grew up in the Midwest. My grandparents were dairy farmers in northern Wisconsin, and my family was predominantly factory workers and farmers, right? So the path for me was going to be enter one of those trades or disciplines. That the path to college just wasn't really carved out for me. I had good grades. I played, varsity sports. There were a couple of universities or colleges that sniffed around for partial scholarships, but nobody came with a full deal. So there wasn't that opportunity for me to just continue education and not have to worry about what was next. So in kind of realizing that, that's when I started to look at the military as a viable option for me to, not only get my education, but then get the life skills that I needed to be able to put myself, out there marketable in the world. And it was a one-way ticket out of the Midwest, right? Like I wasn't going to stay in the Midwest forever and deal with those winters and all that miserableness. So fast forward, I took the ASVAB, got recruited by the Air Force in 2001, did all my paperwork, delayed enlistment, was in, pretty much the end of my junior year. All my paperwork was done. I was signed, sealed, and delivered. All I had to do was get through my senior year and graduate. And the most important part of that process and that story was in the fall of that year. That's when 9/11 happened. The towers fell. And I was in political science class sitting in my high school. They rolled a TV in. We watched the second tower fall. And I remember getting home from work, getting home from school that day. And my mom told me, hey, there's a message for you on the answering machine. It was the old school ones with like the little beeping red light. And I played it, and it was the recruiter. And he, the message was very cryptic. It was like, I don't know what's happening. Don't stay too far away from contact. We don't know if you're going to finish school, but all your paperwork's done. We could pull you at any moment. And luckily enough, I got all the way through that. So anyway, went in 2002, had a stellar 8-year career in the Air Force, security forces, military police officer, awesome assignments, deployed to Iraq in 2005, nuclear security, presidential security, a little bit of everything, did quite a bit of traveling. And, when I got out of the military, I had kind of this growing up moment at 26 after doing 8 years in the military of deciding, kind of, well, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I had this heart and desire for service, but I didn't know how that was going to manifest itself. So I kicked the tires on law enforcement in the civilian world because obviously I was a cop in the military. That would have been a logical fit. It just wasn't as appealing to me at the time. Took kind of a bridge job in higher education law enforcement, working as a security director at a community college on the East Coast, then pivoted out here to California to the West Coast, all the while doing my master's degree in public administration, and with the goal at the end to obviously break into local government. And my opportunity presented itself with LA County, the world's largest municipal government organization, 40 something departments, 115,000 employees, servicing a population of over 10 million. And it's been a wild ride ever since.
And that is amazing story. It's like, I'm a true believer in like wherever you are supposed to end up, somehow the universe conspires to get you there. And a lot of time you don't even think how you're going to get, but you just ends up at the right place at the right time, right people. It just works. And being true to the heart and true to what your purpose is and just kind of trusting. And I think that will let you here, like, managing one of the biggest counties in US is no joke. It's literally no joke. Like, can you talk a little bit about your like day-to-day role? Like, what do you
Yeah,
do?
my day-to-day job in the county is very unique. So I started I've been with the county for 11 years now. I started in the county working on the property tax side of our department. So billing and collecting the 2.3 million secured property tax bills for LA County. We have the largest tax roll, no surprise, in the United States. And was managing a team of 50 individuals that were providing daily customer service to those 2.3 million people. So you never knew who was going to call you about what. Was it going to be a bank, a lender, an individual taxpayer? You never knew where the inquiry was going to come from or what the inquiry was going to be. And I had an amazing team. We ran a call center, a public counter, email correspondence, all of the different touch points to make sure that we were meeting the need of as many constituents as we could on a daily basis. And obviously it was an overwhelming task, because you have finite resources in government, and 50 staff was not enough on some days to meet the need. And some folks had to call back the next day or got a delayed response from us, if they sent an email or whatever the case may be. But we did the best we could with what we got. And, as a result, we were always well north of a 99% collection rate every year on our tax bill roll, which is phenomenal. We had a very, very, very small delinquency rate that turned over into default every year. So super proud of that. And about 2 years ago, give or take, I had kind of mastered that skill set, if you will, managing and moving things around in the tax world. And I know there wasn't really an opportunity for me to continue to grow there. So I sat down and had really a transparent conversation with my department director and asked if there were opportunities elsewhere in the department for me to pivot my toolbox and kind of learn a new subject matter. And, fortunately, there was an opening over on our treasury side of our business in the cash management division, where I'm currently managing the division, as part of a 3-branch initiative that deals with our $55 billion treasury pool on a daily basis. So we have our public finance team who does the investing. They're the ones that buy the silver bullets and get us the yields. My cash management team is basically the county's checkbook. We deal with all the incoming money, outgoing money, and then account for the excess money to give it to the public finance team to invest. And then our internal controls team that is the checks and balance and the bookkeeping on all the financials. So that way we're balanced across the board and that there's no problems when the auditors come looking.
Wow, that sounds amazing, man. Like me coming from marketing, like anytime in finance is just like, wow, it's related to taxes. Like I was reading an article, like I mentioned earlier, in ICMA, you talk about financial solutions for every residence, like you're doing, especially you're doing the taxes and tax collectibles. And as a resident, that's always like a scary thing, right? Because there's something that is non-intuitive. As a resident, if we go even read about what tax laws are, it's never in plain English. That makes it even more challenging and confusing.
Right.
And you talked about financial solutions for every residence, and over there you talk about kind of the 3 initiatives, like expanding the use of prepaid cards, increasing financial education awareness through partnerships, and of course the banking access for people experiencing like homelessness. Like, how do you come up with different type of initiatives that you think your team needs to do, and are these like a year-long type of initiatives or like ongoing? Like, how do you decide on those initiatives? How do you finalize those? And then how do you manage, like, hey, these are my initiatives, then these are my goals, and these are my tasks, how I'm going to get those initiatives done? So how does this whole process kind of work for you?
Absolutely. And it's not me just sitting around thinking of great ideas, right? So we're going to dispel that myth right off the bat. These aren't all things that Ben just sits at his desk and has an epiphany and he writes down and then we go to work, right? This is really a survey of kind of society and looking at kind of the wicked problems of society. And from my financial perspective and lens, how can I lend my knowledge, skills, and ability and my team's knowledge, skills, and abilities to be able to provide a solution that's functional for the population that needs to be serviced, and what are the problems with the current process that we can make more effective and more efficient to be able to deliver a better public social service. The prepaid cards is a really interesting one because those are really system involved use. Those are foster care kids and different folks that have kind of been transient through the system where they're entitled to a benefit maybe on a monthly basis. And it's so hard to issue somebody a check when they're constantly in motion, right? Like, where do we send it? How do we get it to them? How do we make sure that they can take it somewhere and they don't go to like a payday loan cashing place and like they get scalped for 20% to cash the check, right? Most of them are probably unbanked or underbanked, so they don't have access to banking resources. So the prepaid card kind of became a great solution for us to look at because it's a branded Visa card with one of our partner banks, and it works and functions just like your iDebit card that we would go and swipe at a store for any kind of service or good that we needed. And the fact that that's reloadable and that can be monitored by a case carrier, so they can kind of see how the individual is managing their financial situation. But then on the flip side of that, we're offering financial education as well, right? Because a lot of times folks get money, but they just don't understand what they're supposed to do with money, right? Like it's the kind of the solution to an immediate need. But how do we build up that generational wealth and the making sure that we're being smart about, how we make purchases and we don't purchase beyond our means and we don't end up with those 18, 20, 24% interest rates, or these now the market is flooded with the buy now, pay later options, right? All of those things are just out there for consumers to just gobble up, but they don't understand the consequences of them until they're already behind the eight ball. So making sure that we're getting in front of that with our partner banks and really, getting in front of large crowds of individuals, whether it be youths, whether it be English as a second language populations within LA County, whether it be seniors that are subject to predatory reverse mortgages and the different things that could be introduced in their wheelhouse. But all of that falls under that financial literacy umbrella. And we have a great relationship with our Department of Consumer and Business Affairs, who runs the Center for Financial Empowerment, to be able to connect with kind of these disconnected or disenfranchised or underrepresented populations throughout the county to make sure that they have access to information that empowers them to start creating that generational wealth and having more equitable wealth distribution. The last thing that's on that list that you kind of touched on was, bank accounts for people experiencing homelessness. And that's a real challenge, right? So that, prepaid cards becomes an option for that as well. Although, the risk you run with that is somebody just takes it to an ATM, swipes it, drains the cash off of it, and then all of a sudden the card's useless, right? Because now they've just sucked the cash out of it. And a lot of people that are experiencing homelessness have a myriad of other things that they're dealing with. So I don't think there's really a best use case out there yet for how to deal with financials and folks experiencing homelessness. But I do know that there are monumental moves in the banking space, just working with our large banking partners, that they are, just working themselves to the bone, trying to figure out and crack the enigma of people experiencing homelessness to make sure that they have access to resources. So that way we can continue to try to chip away at this societal problem.
Actually, that's a really excellent point you mentioned, like education to the youth on how to wisely use the money. Like, even if you look at like some of these stats on credit card companies, especially within the last 4 years, because a lot of businesses got like ARPA funds and a lot of residents got a lot of influx of money, and people started spending. So in 2020, all of a sudden the spending was amazing. The stock is going really, really high, but then the inflation kicks in, and now within the last 2 to 3 years, people are putting their groceries even on their credit cards and paying like 25-30% on the stuff that they don't need. Like, so having them education on that this is not free money. And a lot of time we see, I mean, nothing to bash against credit card companies, but a lot of information that comes through out here is like, just pay your minimum amount, and you end up paying like 20x, if not more, through your life. Your $100 loan, you might end up paying like $500 if you just keep paying minimum payments, right? It just goes forever.
Absolutely.
Education
Absolutely.
on those things is so critical.
And that's, unfortunately, in our formal education system, those are gaps, right? Those are blind spots in the formal education process. So, if somebody doesn't have, parents or an invested adult that's teaching them those things, where else are they going to garner that information? Because it's not available in the education system. If it's not available from the trusted adults that are in their lives, they're kind of left on their own to figure it out. And their best guess might get them started behind the eight ball before they even know it.
Exactly. And once you start behind, it is very difficult to come up front. Okay.
Absolutely.
And when you like this initiative, for example, that you talk about, education for residents to kind of understand, especially the people for homelessness, like how do you take that initiative and get your team in line that, hey, in order to get this initiative going, these are the things we're going to have to do. Research is probably one, execution, whatever those things are. And then how do you say, hey, these 5 individuals in my team are going to go work on this? Like, if these are your tasks, and how do you keep track of everybody's doing their things on time so the project doesn't last forever?
That's that's the wizardy of public management, I think, because my team's small. My team is very small. I have 15 staff from top to bottom, 12 analysts, right? I don't have an army of hundreds of analysts to go out there and do the work. And my team is split into two different unique functions, right? I have my day-to-day operations folks, which are the ones that are moving the money, right? Money comes in, money goes out, earmarked for finance, right? Those folks are doing almost the exact same thing every day because they're updating the forecasting calendars and telling my public finance team, hey, we're going to have an influx of money due to property taxes or this payment or whatever's coming down from the state, so that way they can keep finance abreast in advance of when the money gets deposited. So that way they can already have an eye on the market to know what's available to be able to put that in and where our pool needs to be at, right? Like, there may be times where we only need short-term paper, 30, 60, 90 days. There may be times where we're looking to buy and hold. So we're looking at 1 year, 3 year, 5 year notes, depending on what the yield producing is. And we have to align ourselves with our investment policy, right? The safety of the funds, liquidity to be able to draw it out if we need it, and yield is last, right? So we're not chasing the interest. We won't put ourselves at risk at all of the safety of the money or the liquidity of the money just to chase a higher yield. So those are all things that come into play on my operations side. When I flip to my project side, those are the ones that kind of see the initiatives, hey, we're looking for a certain bank service, or we're looking for the board of supervisors has said, we need to go and figure X, Y, or Z out. And those are some of my best and brightest, right? Those are folks that I can say, okay, I don't know what this currently looks like in today's state. So I need you to first call 3 of the banking partners that we know have a known product, do kind of a Q&A with them, triangulate your findings, and it becomes a checklist, right? So it's like, do the research, do the homework, triangulate your findings. Once you've triangulated your findings, I need a recommendation. Once you've given me a recommendation, you've justified your recommendation. Now I'm going to go back to whatever bank offers that best product. And now I need a sales sheet, or I need whatever I need from them to be able to understand the costs associated with the service. Then I need to start meeting with the business unit that has the need. Perfect example. I'm working with our public administrator, public guardian folks right now. And these are the folks that deal with either decedent estate, so somebody passed away and there's no heir that's able to be located, or people that have been conserved, right? So they're no longer fiscally able to be stewards of their own money. So somebody needs to have guardianship. And we're looking at advancing the prepaid card to that population. But what does that look like, right, in that guardianship situation? Because if somebody's not fiscally responsible, you're not just going to hand them a card that reloads every month and let them go, right? So we're having to figure out all of the touch points, and that becomes my analyst really working with the business use case and the subject matter experts in that business use case to figure out, okay, where are all the touch points and where are all the needs, for information to be inputted, oversights to be put in place, checks and balances, risk assessment, all of the different things. And we could get 75% of baking a project and then have to pull the plug because we see that there's just a roadblock, that this is not going to work. And those are not ideal situations, but I would rather not launch something that I know is going to fall on its face. I would rather pull the plug and, go back to the last viable step and then start off down a different road. And sometimes that's wasted work, but I would rather do the double work than to be on the front page of the LA Times for a failed program.
No, and I think that there's no such thing as failure. There's only feedback. Like you will never know if it's going to work or not unless you go out and try. And
Right.
is also saying that I don't know if I'm going to be able to quote it right, that the master has failed more times than the student has tried. Right.
Right.
So one of the things you talk about, going through this thing, and that's, that's the way to learn. And next time you know
Absolutely.
better, and when you talk to other people, you guide your team, you're able to guide them in a better way. I've done these 5 things. This is what the blockages were. If you're able to figure out solution, we can go this route since you're a new, fresh mind. If you're not, this is another best way. So
That's what I love with my team, right? Is why I allow them the liberty to, okay, here's what it is. Go figure out with the partners what's available and then come to me with a recommendation, right? I'm not automatically saying, go talk to this bank. I know they have this product. This is what we're going to use. I don't, that's not my management style. I want to empower my team to go find the answer themselves. Could they probably do it faster if I know exactly what it is and I told them what it is? Absolutely. But I'm now robbing them of that experience of using their knowledge, insight, skills of deduction, right? To be able to reduce down to a recommendation that they can defend. And if I'm constantly giving them the answer, they're just a glorified doer. I need thinkers. I don't need doers.
that's such a great point. Like, in life, we learn when life pushes you. And that's how you kind of get to know your team as well. Okay, who's the one who just wants like a to-do list Monday morning, or who's the
Right.
one who actually wants to go out and search for answers?
And there are roles for those individuals, right? I'm not diminishing doers at all, right? There's place in every organization for people that will just come in, give you exactly what you need, punch out at the end of the day and go. But depending on the role, of your area of responsibility, you know an analyst, I need to be able to critically think. I can't just have somebody that, hey, here's your 70 widgets for the day, you make your 70 widgets and we're good, because not everything that they come across throughout the course of the day is going to be an exact carbon copy of what they just did.
exactly that. And I think that's a good segue to, like, you had an interview at Apolitical on how to influence and manage upwards. And this kind of goes into, like you talk about your style, that you end up being like in kind of like the middleman, that you also have to manage your team, then you have bosses. And one of the
Right.
things you talk about in the interview was that your team sometimes maybe wants to work, has needs for you like 9 to 5, but your bosses might be like, hey, I want to get stuff done after hours. And when we're 2025, not much responsibilities, easy to manage. Yeah, I'll work weekends, I'll work in the evening is fine. But as you start getting a family, you get married, you have kids, and how do you even manage that and be at a good spot and keep your mental health? Because burnout is real. Like it's
Absolutely, it's real. It is absolutely real. I am a huge proponent of boundaries, and I have, in every role that I've ascended in local government, I've sat down with my new boss or a boss that already knows me, and we reestablish what my professional boundaries are, right? They know what they're going to get from me between the hours of 7 and 5 when I'm on the clock, right? They will get 100% of my attention all the time for anything that they need, right? I have a dedicated lunch hour every day. I get up and get out of my office. I go for a walk. I take one of my subordinates to lunch. I have lunch with a colleague. I get away from my office space. I do not like eating in front of my computer or trying to have a working lunch. If we're gonna have a working lunch, we can go have a conversation offsite and we can talk about whatever we need to talk about. We're not going to do it in the office. Um, but in that boundary setting, I'm a huge proponent of time budgeting and time blocking, right? Like in my time budgeting, I extend that past my duty date, right? Like, so I know what my time block is from 7 to 5 because that's my on the clock time. But then after 5 o'clock hits, I know what kind of 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night looks like too, because that's my family time. That's kids sports time. That's, depending on what night of the week it is, I'm a full-time doctoral student as well. There's study time that's pegged in there at any random thing. And in order for me to be able to do all of those things, I can't continue to say yes to the 7 to 5. I need to be able to turn the 7 to 5 off. Yes, when I walk in the door, I have a government issued cell phone. It turns face down on the bureau. I don't open my laptop, my government issued laptop at home, unless, I've already given an advance commitment that I'm going to work on something because it's a team need and it's been established well in advance. It's not a last minute job. But those two things, those are boundaries for me. I don't carry those two devices with me when I'm at home on the weekends. I'm at kids' sporting events. Like those things aren't attached to me. There are a very few handful of individuals, my HR director, my boss, my direct subordinate manager, that have my personal cell phone number, right? And if the world is on fire, they know like the code word to text me to pull me away from whatever I am. But they also know that it has to be an emergency. Like they don't abuse that. And that's just the level of trust that we've developed. I give them the autonomy to do their thing. My assistant division manager, he's responsible for the operations. He runs the whole thing. He comes to me when he needs advice, guidance, or to put him on the right path. But other than that, he has complete autonomy and I trust him. And if he needs something from me, he will come and ask. I don't need to have my hands in his operation to know he's doing the right thing. Um, and all of that comes back to boundaries, right? And those are the same conversations that I have with a subordinate that I have with my boss. At the end of the day, I walk through my shop when I'm in the office or when I'm at home on Teams. At 5 o'clock, I issue a message. It's time to shut down, log off, go home. If I'm in the office, I'm walking through my cubicles. Guys, turn it out, turn it off. It's time to go. 5:15. This needs to be a ghost town, right? Like they have lives outside of work too, and we as public sector managers need to empower them to feel okay about walking away from the job at the time that they're supposed to stop, because otherwise, exactly what you mentioned, that burnout, that mental drain, it's all going to take its toll. And I would rather have an individual recharge on a daily basis than have them reach a critical breakdown and lose them for a week because they're either sick, they just need mental health time, whatever the case may be. We need to break that up in sections for them and allow them to feel okay doing that.
Actually, that is such a beautiful thing. I've never heard of anybody doing this the way you said, like after at 5 o'clock, you actually go through the cubicles, look at your team, tell them, shut it. I have never heard anybody that, but I think that is like one of the most amazing things that because if you're boss, and then as an employee, you will feel far more loyalty and you will far your work level will exceed because like, hey, yeah, this person understands that work is just part of life. It is not my whole life. Like I've been on the other side, like I kid you not, my previous couple roles. I had a party at my house, my friends are over, and my boss calls me on Saturday night. Hey, we need to do this landing page. Let's make it happen today. We need to do it. And I'm like, there's no emergency, there's not even deadline. But since he promised his boss, I had to send my friends home and actually work on the landing page and make it live by Saturday night. So Monday morning is there. And when Monday morning I got to work, nobody cared for it. And that kind of thing gives you a little bit of sour taste. Like, okay, next time if you
Absolutely.
call me something, I will think 50 times before doing it, right? And the way you are doing is like, hey, I understand you have a life. I understand work is part of it. You have to go recharge, be with your family. That thing is more important. I think that leadership style is beautiful. So, big,
Yeah.
big kudos on doing that. Uh,
Thank you.
I think I'm gonna steal that. Like whenever I have employees, I'm gonna do a little team run or cube runs. Like go home, shut up, and go home.
Absolutely. And my team, they work hard, right? Like we have deadlines throughout the day, 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon to get our 4 o'clock wires out. Like they are grinding to meet every one of our deadlines throughout the course of the day. And if I let them, yeah, they would love to get a jump start on the next day's work. But next day's work is for next day. It's not for 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 o'clock in the evening when you need to be engaged in what your other priorities are. We work to live, not live to work.
Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely. Like one last thing is talk about, like AI. That's like the big elephant in the room. Like
Yes.
I've been going down this rabbit hole of AI in government for the last couple of months, reading everything on Microsoft and whatever they have. And like, your day-to-day job, you talk about, you have a lot of analysts, you have a lot of people doing these things for you. So one is how do you think AI will actually affect overall like your sector in general? And second is, are you currently using or your team has started exploring certain tools on how to do certain activities efficiently? So then AI is not being looked at, hey, this is going to replace my role, but this is more like, hey, this AI is my quote unquote secretary who's going to help me do this stuff faster so I can happily leave at 5 o'clock.
No, I absolutely have been playing with this in my head, but I will tell you the big red flag that exists for me in my sector, specifically my slice of the sector, finance, is the data that we're feeding. And that's the risky part. So I think there are institutions out there that are on the cutting edge of this. I know University of Michigan has their own self-contained closed ChatGPT circuit. I know there's a lot of OpenAI out there. I will not touch OpenAI with a 10-foot pole, right? All of these individual agencies are starting to build their own closed AI loops. And the more that that becomes tested and a proven model, that it's secure and that it can't be breached, I think that opens up the opportunity for for local government to trust, but then also my sector to be able to even trust to a next level. Right now, I'm using software, SaaS-based solutions, right, to be able to ingest the data, aggregate the data, do the things that we need it to do. Is that something AI can probably do? Absolutely. But right now, I don't have a closed loop that I can put that in. So I can't risk having an unintentional, silo of information going out the backside that's now giving all of my accounting activities, all of my investment information, all of that sliding out the back door, all of my partnership banking information, like bank account numbers, you name it, right? Like that's all such sensitive data that could put the county in absolute financial ruin, that there is this, let's pump the brakes until we find what the solution is going to be. I absolutely believe that there is value add to AI and the work that we do. I just need to be able to trust what the platform security is before I can get fully on board with it with both feet. So that being said, I think there's a lot of strides that are happening across the local government landscape. I just came back from a 3-day conference in Palm Springs all about AI in local government, all the way from trash collection to, accounting and budget books and you name it. I mean, there's 1.5 million ways that we can use this technology, but it gets really dicey when I start to talk about a $55 billion investment pool and the world's largest municipal government treasury. And we have a backdoor leak. So again, keep my name off the front page of the LA Times is my ultimate goal in my public service career.
And
And
that
I think LA County, if and when we get there, it will be on our own insular system. Very similar to what Michigan did in the higher education space of creating a closed loop, institution based, it's under like triple firewall in like 13 different cloud spaces, like just this phenomenally Fort Knox type security system to be able to keep that data, because it absolutely would lead to financial ruin for a county. And that's, being one of the biggest GDPs in the nation, right? In Southern California. I mean, there's just so much bad that could go from a sidestep in this arena. So it's just, I think we're going to be cautiously optimistic and a late adopter as far as bringing this on and harnessing its power within at least the scope of the work that I do. And government is a slow adopter anyway. I mean, there's a lot of municipalities that are just still moving from on-prem software solutions to cloud-based environments, right? Like LA County is just in the last couple of years really built a SaaS cloud-based footprint, right? Like up to that point, we've been all insular, physical servers. We have a data warehouse inside the county. Like we have been very, very, very protective of our infrastructure, and the cloud makes us nervous, let alone the next level of this thing.
I know I'm with you. And I think sometimes cloud people think but cloud is basically your data on somebody else's computer.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the fact that we don't control it drives our IT nuts.
But cool. And any like last thing is like any parting words to somebody who wants to be in finance in local government in your type of sector, like for young leaders who wants to join in. What do you think your 2 cents are on the work life and also on how to get started on that thing?
I think be willing and open to enter the door wherever the door opens. A lot of people will look at entry-level jobs or jobs that they may qualify for, they may have the credentials for, but it doesn't interest them. If you're looking to get in government, just get in the door. Get in the door, show them what you're worth, move around the organization. If the organization is a small organization, get in, establish yourself. And once you've entered the local government network, the sky's the limit because there are networks all over the United States. There are multiple different executive professional organizations that you can float through to be able to find jobs. Right now, the public sector professional pool is very shallow. So if you are operating in another space, the nonprofit space, the for-profit space, private sector, and you are looking for a rewarding career that will drive you intrinsically, public sector is where it's at. And because the talent pool is so shallow, you most likely have the toolbox that local government needs. You just never thought about looking there. So that would be number one. And number two is lifelong learning, right? Just continue to have a thirst for knowledge. Whatever you can suck up, sponge up, absorb, humble yourself, learn from your lowest level employee, learn from the highest level executive in your organization, and challenge yourself to learn when it's not required. Read books, do micro learning. If you're advantageous enough, go to school. Certificate based, degree based, doesn't matter, but constantly be yearning for that next piece of knowledge because you never know when that's going to be the differentiating factor to get you into that next role.
No, that's an excellent way to wrap this up. Like, last question is, you might talk about books. What is the book you're reading right now?
The book that I'm reading right now, actually, I just finished a book when I was away at CACTAC, and the name is escaping me. It was that good of a book. It was that good of a book. Because I can't think of that, I'm going to come to my all-time favorite leadership book. It's called Leading with the Heart by Duke head coach Mike Krzyzewski. Fantastic book. If you're a college basketball fan, you will absolutely love it. But he draws the parallels of building a team through the sports arena, through life and business, and makes all of the connections and corollaries. Preseason, regular season, postseason, like all of it. And there are quotes at the beginning of every chapter that help you conceptualize what team building looks like in life and business to connect it to sports. Absolutely favorite book, bar none. My book is destroyed. It's highlighted. It's written on. The margins are all nastied up, but that is my absolute favorite leadership book.